You've been told to be kind, but not too bold, to be gentle, but not too loud, to be good, even if it means being invisible, and somewhere along the way, you began to lose the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. This isn't just another self-help book. This is a reclamation, a remembering, a return to the version of you that never needed fixing, only permission. In this audiobook, you won't be told to be softer. You'll be reminded how powerful you already are. So if you've ever been called too sensitive, too much, too angry, too ambitious, or too late, you're in the right place. Because now, we're unlearning the rules, rewriting the story, and rising, not as someone new, but as someone real. This is your invitation to think like a villain and win like a king. Think like a villain, win like a king. Written and published by Stoic Guardian. Chapter 1. The villain you buried inside. There's a version of you that's been hidden, not because it was wrong, but because it was powerful. You were taught to fear it, to tuck it away behind your smiles and good manners, your people-pleasing and quiet compliance. You were taught to be agreeable, likable, small. And when anger rose in your chest, when confidence flickered in your bones, when you wanted more than what you were given, you were told to be humble, be nice, be grateful. So you folded the edges of yourself to fit into boxes that didn't belong to you. And somewhere along the way, you began to believe that the part of you that resisted, the part that questioned, challenged, and demanded, was dangerous, villainous. So you buried it. You buried your voice. You buried your power. You buried the part of you that refused to be controlled, and what you were left with was a version of yourself that was safe, but starving. That's the lie you were fed, that goodness means obedience and that power is selfish. But there's another truth waiting for you, one you've always known, deep down, that sometimes you have to think like a villain to survive a world that wants you soft and silent. Because the villain isn't always the one who harms others. Sometimes the villain is the one who refuses to be harmed anymore, the one who draws the line, the one who walks away, the one who finally says, "This ends with me." And when you reclaim that version of you, the bold one, the feared one, the honest one, you don't become cruel, you become whole. You remember that the part of you that says no more is sacred, that your fire isn't there to destroy you, it's there to light the path home. And when you walk that path unapologetically, you don't just survive, you rise, you win. You've been taught to celebrate softness and demonize sharpness. But what if both were needed? What if the king and the villain weren't opposites, but different phases of the same awakening? You can't truly rule your own life if you're afraid of your own edge. And that's what this journey is about. Meeting the edge with compassion, with courage, with clarity. You don't need to erase your darkness. You need to understand it, because buried beneath your guilt and perfectionism is the most honest part of you. The one who stopped playing along, even if it meant being misunderstood. That part of you isn't here to ruin things. It's here to protect you. And maybe no one ever taught you how to hold your own power with grace. Maybe you were only ever shown extremes. Control or collapse, silence or rage. But now, you're ready for something deeper. You're ready to look into your shadow and say, "I'm not afraid of you anymore. Let's walk together." That's not villainy. So let's begin here, not with shame, not with fixing, but with witnessing. The part of you that got called selfish for having boundaries, the part that was labeled difficult for telling the truth, the part that scared people because it stopped shrinking. You didn't become too much, you simply stopped being less. And now, you're allowed to choose yourself, not later, not after you've earned it. Now, choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's repair. It's how you build a kingdom inside you that no one else can burn down. So take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Let your chest open. You are allowed to feel powerful in your own skin. You are allowed to stop apologizing for wanting more. And you are allowed to become the version of you that no longer waits to be saved. Because now you remember, the villain was never the enemy. The villain was the king in hiding. I no longer fear my power. I welcome it. I walk with the parts of me I was told to bury, and I rise with them. Chapter 2. When kindness became a cage. You were taught to be kind. Maybe it was through soft words, or maybe it was through fear. Maybe someone praised your sweetness when you kept the peace, when you stayed quiet, when you didn't cry too loudly. Maybe you were rewarded for your patience while your boundaries were quietly erased. Maybe they called you mature for holding in your anger, strong for not reacting, loving for staying when you wanted to leave. So you learned that kindness meant self-sacrifice, that goodness meant silence, that love meant tolerating what hurt, and so you made yourself small. You smoothed over your truth. You smiled through disrespect, and over time you stopped noticing when your yes meant losing yourself. Because that kind of kindness, it wasn't love, it was survival. It was training. It was the cage they handed you, with golden bars and polite words, and called it virtue. But now you know, or at least you're starting to. You're starting to feel the tightness in your chest when you agree too quickly, the exhaustion after conversations where you disappeared, the rage beneath your "I'm fine." These are signs not of failure, but of awakening. You are not becoming colder, you are remembering your fire. Because real kindness, it includes you. It makes space for your boundaries. It honors your time, it respects your no. The kindness you were taught was one-sided, a tool to keep you quiet, soft, manageable. But the kindness you're learning now, it's alive, it has edges. It says, I can be loving without being a doormat. It says, I can care about you and still choose myself. This is the kindness that liberates, not traps. The kind that honors both your heart and your voice. Think about it. The version of kindness you were raised with didn't ask how you felt. It asked, how can you make everyone else comfortable? And over time, that question shaped your nervous system. You started to scan rooms for what others needed before checking in with yourself. You measured your worth by how easy you were to be around, and in trying so hard to be kind, you abandoned your truth. That's not your fault. That's programming. But now, you get to update the code. You get to interrupt the pattern. You get to say, my kindness does not require my erasure. And it won't feel easy at first, because guilt will come, old beliefs will rise. The child in you might whisper, but if I say no, will they still love me? That's okay. You can hold that child gently and still say no. That's how you rebuild safety, not through pleasing, but through self-trust. So how do you break the cage? Slowly, softly, repeatedly. You start by noticing when your kindness is rooted in fear, when your helpfulness is actually self-abandonment, when your silence is actually self-protection. And then you pause, you breathe, you ask, is this true for me? Is this safe for me? Is this kind to me? And if the answer is no, you honor that, even if it's hard, even if no one clapped, even if you shake while doing it. Because each time you choose your truth over your training, you crack the bars of that cage. And over time, the cage becomes a door. The door becomes a path. The path becomes freedom. Not the loud kind, but the deep, grounded, quiet kind, the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that says, I don't need to betray myself to belong anymore. So let this be your invitation, to unlearn the kindness that cost you everything, to remember the you that existed before the people-pleasing, the you that knew how to say no without guilt, the you that didn't need to explain why you feel what you feel. That version of you still lives inside you, and she is not cruel. She is clear. She is not selfish. She is sovereign. She is not mean. She is whole. And she's tired of performing kindness that empties her. She's ready to rest, to speak, to be. And when you let her return, you don't stop being kind. You just start being kind to yourself, too. And that changes everything. I am allowed to be kind without betraying myself. I choose truth over performance, clarity over compliance, and love that includes me too. Chapter 3. Why you apologize for existing. You say, "I'm sorry," before you even speak. You shrink your voice, your needs, your presence, just in case it's too much, just in case someone leaves, just in case you become difficult. Maybe you've caught yourself apologizing for taking up space in a room, for asking a question, for needing rest, for being human. You say sorry for crying, for laughing too loud, for existing in a way that isn't perfectly edited, and you don't even think about it anymore. It's automatic. It's in your breath, in your posture, in your pauses. But you weren't born this way. You weren't born apologizing. You were taught. Somewhere along the line, someone, something, told you that your existence required justification, that your emotions were inconvenient, that your needs were burdens, that your aliveness was something to tone down. So you learned to apologize for who you are, just to be allowed to stay. But that apology, that never-ending loop of "I'm sorry for existing," it's not truth. It's trauma. It's what happens when you're conditioned to believe that love is conditional, that safety is earned through erasure. You didn't start saying sorry because you were wrong. You started saying it because you were scared. Scared to be abandoned, scared to be rejected, scared to be too visible. So you made yourself smaller, quieter, more agreeable, and people might have praised you for it, called you polite, humble, well-behaved. But that's not praise. It's proof. Proof that the world is more comfortable when you're pretending. And now, you're done pretending, not with aggression, not with vengeance, but with softness, with truth, with a sacred clarity that you no longer owe anyone your disappearance. The weight of constant apology lives in your body. It shows up in the way you fidget when speaking truth, the way you smile when you're uncomfortable, the way you question your own needs before ever voicing them. But now, your body is asking for release. It's tired of performing worthiness. It's tired of making itself easier for others to digest. It's tired of holding the tension of 1,000 and you don't have to carry it anymore. You can begin to unwind it, gently. You can catch the next "I'm sorry" and ask yourself, is this mine, or is this a habit I've outgrown? You can start replacing it with breath, with silence, with "thank you for listening," or "this matters to me," or "no thank you." You are not rude for existing. You are not difficult for taking up space. You are a living being, not a burden, not a favor, not a mistake. And your presence as it is not something that needs to be earned through constant apology. You are not here to be invisible. You are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be seen, fully, unapologetically, tenderly. And being seen doesn't mean being loud. It means being real. It means honoring what you feel, what you need, what you dream of. It means trusting that you are enough, not because you're perfect, but because you are present. So let this be your undoing. Let this be the gentle death of every apology that was never yours. Let this be the moment where you stop negotiating your right to be here, and when the urge to say sorry rises, pause. Place your hand over your heart, breathe, and say instead, "I am allowed to be here. I am allowed to speak. I am allowed to need. I am allowed to be me." Not later, not when you're easier, now. Because the truth is, your existence is not an accident. It is not a mistake. It is not an inconvenience. It is a miracle. You are a miracle. And miracles do not apologize for shining, they simply do, and so will you, with breath, with grace, with quiet power that says, I'm not sorry for being alive. I'm not sorry for being me. I'm not sorry for taking up space. I am here. I am whole. And I'm done apologizing for that. I do not apologize for my truth. I release the weight of false guilt. I am not a burden. I am a light. I belong here, fully and freely. Chapter 4. Turning guilt into grit. Guilt has a way of living in your chest like a ghost, always whispering, always waiting, always watching. You feel it when you say no, when you rest instead of perform, when you choose yourself in a room that expected you to bend. Guilt doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's the quiet heaviness after you finally speak your truth. Sometimes it's the ache in your stomach after you protect your boundary. Sometimes it's the voice in your head that says, was that too much? You've been taught that guilt means you've done something wrong, but the truth is, guilt often shows up not when you've betrayed others, but when you've stopped betraying yourself. Because when you've spent years tying your worth to being needed, guilt becomes the price you pay for choosing freedom. But guilt is not always truth. Guilt is often conditioning, and conditioning can be unlearned. You see, guilt is what happens when you break rules that were never yours but felt like law. Rules like, don't be selfish, always be available, don't make others uncomfortable. So when you act outside those rules, when you honor your energy, protect your space, speak your mind, your nervous system sounds the alarm. Not because you're unsafe, but because you're unfamiliar. You've confused guilt with guidance, but they are not the same. Guilt says, return to the cage. Grit says, keep going. And you're allowed to choose grit now. Not hardening, not bitterness, but the kind of quiet strength that grows when you realize, I am not responsible for everyone's comfort. You are not here to hold what was never yours. You are not here to carry someone else's reaction like it's your fault. You are not here to play small so others don't have to stretch. Turning guilt into grit means listening to the guilt, but not obeying it. It means noticing it when it rises and choosing not to make it your compass. Because guilt isn't always a sign you've done wrong. Sometimes it's a sign you've done right. For the first time in a long time, you left a situation that drained you. You told the truth when lying felt easier. You didn't show up when your body was asking to rest. And afterward, guilt arrived. That doesn't mean you've failed. That means you're healing. You are learning what it feels like to not self-abandon. And that feeling, at first it will feel wrong, because guilt speaks in the voice of your past. But grit speaks in the voice of your future. And the more you listen to it, the more you breathe, stay, and rise, the less guilt holds power over your decisions. This transformation is slow but steady. With each moment you meet guilt with grace instead of obedience, you build a new pattern, a new nervous system, a new rhythm of living. You begin to ask, does this guilt come from truth or from training? Is this guilt reminding me of who I am, or who I was told I had to be? And then, you get to choose. You get to hold the guilt gently, but still take the step forward. That's what grit is, not pushing, not punishing, but honoring your truth through the discomfort. That's how you build integrity with yourself. That's how you learn that it's okay if others don't understand, as long as you do. That's how you start living by your own code, not theirs. And with each choice, you become stronger, not because you've hardened, but because you've softened into your self-respect. So let this be the beginning of a new kind of courage, one that doesn't wait for guilt to go away, but moves anyway. One that doesn't need permission to protect your peace. One that remembers, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. And guilt might still come, but now, it won't stop you. Now you'll greet it. You'll thank it for trying to keep you safe, and you'll walk forward anyway, with grit, with grace, and with the quiet, grounded knowing that you are doing the right thing, even if it doesn't feel familiar. This is how you rise. This is how you rebuild. Not in the absence of guilt, but by walking through it, into freedom. I no longer obey guilt. I listen to my truth. I trust the path that honors me, even when it feels unfamiliar. I turn guilt into grit, and I walk forward with grace. Chapter 5. The shadow was never your enemy. There's a part of you you've tried to keep hidden, not because it's wrong, but because you were told it had to stay out of sight. This part is messy, loud, raw. It doesn't perform well. It doesn't smile on command. It doesn't care about being liked. It's the part that feels rage when someone crosses a line. The part that grieves deeper than words can express. The part that remembers every time you were overlooked, unchosen, unheard. You've been told this part is dangerous, shameful, unworthy, so you locked it away. You named it shadow. And then you spent years trying to become lighter, more love, more light, more high vibration. But the truth? That shadow wasn't your enemy. It was your mirror. It was your messenger. It was the version of you that knew exactly what you needed and wasn't afraid to feel it. Your shadow is not here to harm you. It's here to reveal you. It's here to show you what you've denied, what you've suppressed, what you've abandoned in the name of being good. You were taught to fear your darkness, but you were never taught to listen to it. And so you believed the lie, that to be spiritual, you had to be spotless, that to be lovable, you had to be unflawed, that to be whole, you had to cut out the very parts of you that were still bleeding. But healing is not light without shadow. Healing is integration. It's the ability to look at your sadness, your anger, your fear, and say, you get to sit at the table too. Because your wholeness includes every version of you, the tender, the wounded, the protective, the fierce, the one who laughs and the one who screams. All of you deserves presence. All of you is sacred. The shadow gets loud when it's ignored. That's why sometimes you snap. That's why your body stores tension. That's why you feel a sadness you can't explain. It's not weakness, it's memory, it's wisdom. It's the unprocessed pain trying to find a way out. And the more you silence it, the more it turns inward. That's what most of us were never taught, that ignoring your shadow doesn't make it go away, it only makes it lonely. And lonely things act out. Your shadow acts out not because it's evil, but because it's exiled. So instead of running, you return. You listen. You sit beside the feelings you once labeled as bad. You hold your jealousy with compassion. You ask your anger what it needs. You let your sadness have a voice. And what happens next is not destruction, it's release, it's integration. It's the moment you stop fearing yourself and start honoring your full emotional truth. Loving your shadow isn't about justifying harmful behavior. It's about understanding where it comes from. It's about tending to the part of you that had no other choice but to adapt, to guard, to lash out. You can love your darkness and still take responsibility. You can hold yourself accountable without rejecting the parts that developed to protect you. That's what maturity looks like. You are not bad because you have parts of you that hurt. You are human, and those parts need love, not punishment. They need presence, not perfection. They need truth, not shame. And as you learn to meet those parts with open hands, you become someone new. Not a saint, not a savior, but someone deeply real, someone deeply rooted, someone who knows that to be alive is to carry both shadow and light, and to know how to hold them both with reverence. So today, welcome your shadow home. Stop running from the ache. Stop trying to polish your pain until it looks like growth. Let it be pain. Let it speak. Let it soften in your presence. You do not need to be perfect to be worthy. You do not need to be light to be good. You do not need to be healed to be holy. You only need to be honest, and your shadow will meet you there, not with shame, but with truth, with power, with freedom, because when you stop trying to exile the most honest parts of you, you begin to remember something radical. I am not broken for feeling deeply. I am not wrong for being human. I am not unsafe in my own depth. I am allowed to be whole. And my shadow has never been the enemy. It was the guide, the guardian, the witness, and now it becomes the bridge. I honor my shadow as a sacred part of me. I am not afraid to feel all that I am. My depth is not darkness, it is divine. Chapter 6. Rewriting the rules they gave you. They handed you a rulebook the moment you were born. Most of us get one. Some pages are spoken aloud, others whispered silently, implied in the way people flinch at your truth or celebrate your performance. The rules tell you what to be, how to act, what earns love, what invites rejection. They tell you when to speak and when to stay quiet, who to trust, what to fear, what to believe, and little by little you learn. This is what keeps me safe. These rules may not be written down, but they live in your body. They're buried in your shame, etched into your instincts, guiding you before your mind even catches up. Maybe the rules said, don't feel too much, or don't need anything, or only speak if you have something useful to say. Whatever your rules were, they became the cage. And at first you didn't even see the bars. That's how conditioning works. It feels like survival until it starts to feel like suffocation. But what if you paused now, right now, and asked yourself, who wrote these rules, and why am I still obeying them? What if you didn't just break the rules, but rewrote them, not out of rebellion, but out of return? Return to who you were before you were edited, before you were filtered, before you were told that your light had to be dim to be safe. You get to choose new rules now, ones that honor your nervous system, that protect your peace, that center your truth, not someone else's expectations. The old rules demanded your performance, the new ones require your presence. And that shift, it changes everything. Because the moment you start living by your own rules, you stop looking to others for permission. You stop apologizing, you stop justifying. You simply become, and the world may not be ready for that, but you are. The process of rewriting isn't easy. It asks you to sit with your discomfort, to question what felt like law, to grieve what you once called normal, and most of all, it asks you to tell the truth. Not the truth that keeps peace, the truth that sets you free. You may have to disappoint people. You may have to walk away. You may feel the weight of guilt and fear pressing against your chest, but on the other side of that is liberation. Not the kind that looks impressive from the outside, but the kind that lets you sleep at night, the kind that lets you breathe deeper in your own skin. These new rules, they're yours to write. They sound like, I don't explain my boundaries. I don't sacrifice my peace for approval. I don't need to earn rest. I don't abandon myself to make others stay. These aren't just affirmations, they're decisions, and they become real not when you say them, but when you live them. And yes, some people will resist your new rules, not because they're wrong, but because your growth threatens their comfort. People who benefited from your compliance won't celebrate your clarity. People who relied on your silence will question your voice. That's okay. You're not living their life, you're living yours. And in doing so, you'll find new people, aligned people, people who don't flinch when you speak honestly, who don't shrink when you take up space, who don't punish your power, they praise it. Because when you rewrite your rules, you rewrite your relationships too. You stop tolerating crumbs. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Every rule you rewrite becomes a doorway, a new standard, a higher frequency, and eventually the old rules start to sound like someone else's story. One you can close without anger, one you can leave without regret. So take the pen back, not because you need to prove anything, but because you are the author now. You get to write a life that feels like you, that reflects your softness, your edge, your sacred rhythm. You are allowed to create a reality where your needs are not negotiable, where your emotions are not too much, where your joy is not a luxury, it's your baseline. These are your new rules. And the people who are meant for you, they will honor them. They will rise to meet them. And more importantly, you will honor them, even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when the old rules try to pull you back. Because you remember now, freedom doesn't live in obedience. It lives in truth. And truth sounds like your own voice, finally saying, "This is my life, this is my peace, this is my return. I no longer live by rules that silence my truth. I am the author of my life. I write in ink made of honesty, clarity, and self-respect." Chapter 7. How to say no without explaining. There's a moment, maybe you've felt it, when your body knows it's a no, but your mouth still says yes. Your heart sinks, your breath tightens, and then, before anyone can even react, the words spill out, "I'm sorry, it's just that," and suddenly your no isn't a boundary, it's a performance, a softening, a justification, a way to make your truth sound more palatable, more acceptable, more polite. But what if I told you that your no is enough? Not when it's explained, not when it's softened, not when it comes with disclaimers, just enough, on its own, as it is. What would change in your life if you stopped wrapping your no in apology, if you let your boundary stand without needing it to be understood? That kind of clarity, that kind of self-trust, it's not rude, it's revolutionary, especially when you've been trained to be agreeable. You weren't born explaining yourself, you learned it. You learned to make others comfortable before protecting yourself. You learned that love is easier when it's earned through self-sacrifice. So you say yes when you're tired. You say yes when you mean no. And then you explain and explain and explain. Because somewhere in you a voice whispers, "I don't want them to think I'm selfish." Your no is a sentence, not a debate. It doesn't need evidence. It doesn't require anyone else's approval. And the more you explain it, the more you water it down. That doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become clear. You begin to speak from a place inside you that knows your energy, your peace, your presence are precious. And not everyone is entitled to them. Learning to say no without explaining is about trusting that your intuition is reason enough, that your body's wisdom is valid, even if someone else doesn't understand it. It means letting go of the guilt that rises when you step out of your role as the pleaser, the fixer, the yes person. You begin to realize your no isn't rejection, it's direction. It's a gentle redirection of your energy back toward what aligns, what sustains, what keeps you whole. And yes, it might disappoint people. It might confuse them. That's okay. Discomfort is not the same as danger. And their confusion is not your responsibility to fix. You are not responsible for how others interpret your boundaries. You are only responsible for staying true to what your spirit needs. That's what this chapter of your life is about. Not pushing people away, but coming back to yourself, fully, fiercely, quietly. This doesn't mean you'll never explain again. It means you'll stop explaining from a place of fear. You'll begin to discern when a gentle explanation feels kind and when it's just a mask for guilt. You'll feel the difference. One will drain you, the other will affirm you. And slowly your language will change. "I can't" becomes "I won't." "I'm sorry" becomes "thank you for understanding." You'll notice how it feels in your body to honor your no without backpedaling. At first, it might feel shaky, but that shakiness, it's not wrongness, It's your nervous system adjusting to the sound of your own voice. Unfiltered, honest, whole. And with every repetition, your clarity becomes louder than your conditioning. Your boundary becomes your blessing. And your no, it becomes the door you close gently, so you can finally come home to yourself. So if no one ever told you this before, let me tell you now. You do not need to explain your no, not to prove you're good, not to make them stay, not to soften your truth. Your no is sacred, and you are allowed to use it to protect what matters: your time, your health, your rest, your joy, your sanity. Saying no is not rejection, it's self-respect in motion, and as you practice, as you build this muscle, you will start to see the people meant for you don't require you to betray yourself to belong. They honor your no, they trust your yes, and more importantly, you do too. My no is enough. I do not explain my boundaries. I honor my truth with clarity, calm, and compassion, and that is more than enough. Chapter 8. Learning to sit with your power. There's a strange kind of fear that rises when you begin to reclaim yourself, not when you're falling apart, but when you finally feel steady. You catch a glimpse of your own strength, your own clarity, your own energy rising, and instead of pride, you feel panic. You pull back. You self-sabotage. You soften your edge just a little, say yes when you meant no, shrink yourself ever so slightly, because somewhere inside you're still asking, am I allowed to feel this powerful? Most people aren't afraid of being weak. They're afraid of being seen, of taking up space, of becoming undeniable. Because that kind of power, it disrupts everything. It changes your relationships. It threatens the old stories. It ends the version of you that was always easy, quiet, convenient. And that's terrifying, not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. But unfamiliar doesn't mean unsafe. Sometimes it means you've just never sat in your power long enough to recognize it as home. Your power isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't shout or demand or prove. It's the way you breathe when you know you're no longer shrinking. It's in the silence after you set a boundary, in the steadiness of your no, in the softness of your yes. Real power lives in how you return to yourself again and again, especially when it would be easier to people-please, to over-explain, to stay small. And here's the hard truth. No one teaches you how to sit in your power. You have to practice. You have to get used to the feeling of not chasing, not proving, not performing. You have to rewire your nervous system to understand that it's okay to hold space without rushing to fill it, that it's okay to take up room in a world that trained you to disappear. Sitting in your power isn't a performance. The silence of the night is a posture. Benitum. And it starts with stillness. Stillness is where your power sharpens. It's where you stop reacting and start responding. Where you listen, not to the noise outside, but to the rhythm inside. Power doesn't always look like doing more. Sometimes it's the restraint of not engaging, of not proving your worth, of not explaining your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. Power is knowing you don't need to convince anyone of your value. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And when you begin to feel that alignment, everything starts to shift. You stop asking for permission, you stop waiting to be chosen, you realize you've already chosen yourself. And that self, that centered, grounded, sovereign self, she's not intimidating, she's not too much, she's not selfish, she's just whole. And that wholeness at first will feel lonely because not everyone will know how to meet you there. But that's okay. Your power is not dependent on being understood. It's dependent on being honored by you. So what does it look like to sit with your power today? Maybe it's choosing silence instead of defending yourself. Maybe it's taking a walk instead of explaining a boundary. Maybe it's turning off your phone and choosing rest without guilt. These small moments, they are how power becomes embodied, not in your words, but in your choices, not in what you declare, but in what you no longer tolerate. Sitting with your power doesn't mean becoming hard, it means becoming rooted. Rooted in your rhythm, your peace, your deep inner knowing. And yes, the old version of you will try to resurface, the one who pleases, explains, adjusts. Let her rise, and then let her rest. Thank her. She kept you safe. But you're not in survival now, you're in expansion. And expansion asks for space, for stillness, for a willingness to take the throne inside you and stay there. Not with force, but with grace. So today, sit, breathe, drop into the quiet center of who you are, not the version others need, not the one who performs, the version of you who knows she doesn't have to move just to matter, who doesn't have to shrink to be loved, who doesn't have to raise her voice to be heard. That version, she's your power, not the outer shell, the inner truth. And when you begin to trust her, when you begin to sit with her, without flinching, without fleeing, you begin to remember, this is who I've always been beneath the fear. Not too much, not unworthy, just strong, just soft, just here. I am no longer afraid of my power. I sit with it, I trust it, I let it rise within me, quietly, fully, without apology. Chapter 9. Becoming the version of you that doesn't flinch. There's a split second between a trigger and a reaction where your whole body decides, do I stay soft or do I flinch? It's almost invisible, a micro moment, but it tells a deeper story. That flinch is about more than fear. It's memory, it's pattern, it's the muscle memory of self-protection. And it doesn't just happen in danger, it happens in everyday moments. When someone interrupts you and you shrink, when someone questions you and your voice falters, when someone looks at you sideways and you feel yourself retreat just a little. These are the moments that reveal the residue of living in a world that made you question your right to take up space. But what if you stopped flinching? What if, instead of bracing, you breathed? Instead of doubting, you held your ground. That doesn't mean you fight, it means you stand, grounded, soft, unmoved, and in that stillness, something holy begins to take shape. You start becoming the version of you that doesn't flinch anymore. That version of you isn't aggressive, she's not hardened, she's clear, calm, present. She's not immune to criticism, she's just no longer ruled by it. She doesn't apologize for her truth, she doesn't shrink to keep the peace. She listens to her own body before the opinions of strangers, and when discomfort comes, and it will, she doesn't panic. She breathes through it, she stays, she holds eye contact with the parts of herself that used to run. That version of you isn't a fantasy. She's not some distant ideal. She's in you now, under the layers of reaction, under the flinch, under the fear. And you don't become her all at once. You become her slowly, choice by choice, moment by moment, breath by breath. Every time you stay soft in the face of shame, every time you stop explaining what doesn't need to be explained, every time you say, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid to be seen, you invite her forward, you let her lead. Becoming the version of you that doesn't flinch requires presence, because the flinch is unconscious. It happens before thought, so the only way to interrupt it is through awareness, through breath, through the willingness to pause and notice when your body is bracing out of habit, not necessity. And this is where healing deepens, not just in your mind, but in your body. You begin to ask, why did I tense just now? What did I think I needed to protect? You begin to realize that the threat isn't always real, it's remembered. And from that realization, you start to rewire. You start to feel safe in your own skin again. You start to build trust with your nervous system. And over time, your reactions become responses. Your fear becomes information. And slowly, you stop flinching, not because the world is kinder, but because you are. You become kinder to yourself. You stop punishing yourself for not getting it right. You stop replaying the same moments on loop, wondering what you could have said differently. You stop rushing to fill the silence, to soften your boundary, to make others more comfortable with your strength. And instead, you breathe. You speak slower. You stand taller. You trust that your truth doesn't need armor, it just needs presence. The version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't emerge from toughness, she emerges from tenderness. She emerges when you realize that your sensitivity is not weakness, that your clarity is not cruelty, that your presence is not intimidating, it's powerful. She emerges when you decide that your body is not a battlefield, that your heart is not too fragile to be felt, that your truth is not too much to carry. She emerges when you stop asking for the world's permission to be fully here. So here's your invitation. The next time you feel the urge to flinch, pause, soften, stay. Not because you owe anyone an explanation, but because you owe yourself a different story. A story where you don't disappear the moment conflict rises. A story where you don't rewrite your truth just to keep the room calm. A story where your stillness is your strength. And if that feels hard today, start small. Start by noticing. Start by breathing into the places that clench when you feel exposed. Start by saying, I am safe to be seen. And then, show up. Even if your voice trembles, even if your body shakes, show up anyway, because the version of you that doesn't flinch, she's not waiting in the future, she's already here. And every time you return to yourself, you become her. I do not flinch at my own power. I do not retreat from my truth. I meet discomfort with breath, presence, and grace. I am safe to be fully seen. Chapter 10. Anger is not evil. It's evidence. Anger has always had a bad reputation. You were taught that it makes you dangerous, unlikable, out of control. So you hid it, you silenced it. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You laughed it off. You swallowed your truth so well that even you forgot it existed. And slowly, your body became a container, one that held every "I'm fine" when you weren't, every "no problem" when it was, every "sure" that should have been a firm no. But anger doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits. It simmers. It settles deep in your muscles, your jaw, your stomach, until one day it rises, not as rage, but as resentment, as exhaustion, as burnout. And even then you might whisper, "Why am I so tired?" But your body knows. Your body has been screaming with the words you've never let yourself say. Anger is not evil. Anger is evidence. It's proof that something mattered, that something crossed a line, that something was lost, dismissed, or disrespected. Anger is not the enemy. It's the alarm. You don't need to fear your anger. You need to listen to it. Anger is a map. It shows you where your values live, where your needs went unmet, where your boundaries were crossed. It is the part of you that refuses to stay silent about what hurt, and that part, it's not here to destroy, it's here to protect. But we live in a world that punishes anger, especially when it comes from softness. If you were raised to be nice, good, or pleasing, your anger was likely never welcome. You were praised for being easy, quiet, forgiving. So now, when your voice rises, when your chest tightens, when your fists clench, you panic. You think, what's wrong with me? But nothing is wrong. You're just feeling something honest, something ancient, something sacred. Your anger is not shameful. It is a mirror. And in that mirror you see not just what hurts, you see what matters. The power is not in avoiding anger, it's in learning how to hold it, how to feel it fully, without letting it consume you. Because when anger isn't listened to, it explodes. But when honored, it transforms into clarity, into boundaries, into decisions that protect your peace. You don't need to scream to be heard, you need to hear yourself. You need to say the words you've never said. I didn't deserve that. I needed more. I am allowed to feel hurt. And in that honesty, the fire that once burned to destroy becomes a flame that warms. That lights the way forward. That helps you rebuild. Anger, when held with compassion, becomes a tool, not a weapon. It becomes a voice that says, I choose myself now. Not out of vengeance, out of value. You're not becoming unkind. You're becoming clear. And clarity rooted in truth is more powerful than rage ever was. You may still feel afraid of what your anger could do. That's okay. Let the fear sit beside you. But don't let it silence you. Explore your anger like a river. Ask it where it begins, where it wants to go. Let it speak in your journal, in movement, in breath. Let it rise and fall without shame. Anger that is witnessed becomes wisdom. It shows you what to protect, what to let go, what to never tolerate again. And with time, you begin to notice something new. You no longer feel like a ticking time bomb. You feel honest, grounded, awake, and you begin to trust yourself with your own power. That's what this chapter is about. Not taming your fire, but tending to it. Not turning away from your heat, but learning to sit inside it and say, I survived what made me this angry, and I get to choose what I do next. So today, don't run from your anger. Welcome it, hold it, ask what it's trying to show you. Let it be loud if it needs to be, but let it be heard. You are not broken for feeling too much. You are not bad for needing to express it. You are not dangerous because you're no longer swallowing your truth. You are healing, and healing often sounds like rage before it sounds like relief. So breathe, soften your jaw, let your hands relax, and say it clearly without apology. I am not afraid of my anger. It is not evil. It is evidence. And I choose to rise with it, not against myself, but for myself. My anger is not shameful. It is a sign of what matters. I hold it with grace, and I let it guide me toward healing, not harm. Chapter 11. The courage to stop being liked. There's a pull inside many of us that's hard to name, but it shapes everything. The way you speak, the way you dress, the way you downplay your brilliance, soften your truth, adjust your opinions mid-sentence. All for one quiet hope, please like me. And it's not just vanity, it's survival. You were taught early that being liked was the safest thing you could be. Liked people were loved, protected, chosen, so you learned to read the room like a script. You sensed who you had to become. You said what would make them smile. You hid what might make them leave. And slowly, so slowly, being liked became more important than being you. And the cost? It wasn't visible. It was internal. It was the quiet grief of abandoning your own voice to stay acceptable. But now, something inside you is stirring. Something that no longer wants to be liked, if it means not being free. The truth is, being liked is easy. You just have to betray yourself a little, stay agreeable, avoid conflict, make others comfortable at the cost of your own clarity. But being real, that's holy work. That's soul work. And it will cost you something too. Your masks, your people-pleasing, your identity built on fitting in. But what you gain is worth more than all of it. Your peace, your presence, your power. And no, not everyone will clap for the real you. Some will miss the version of you that bent to make them comfortable. Let them. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be true. And truth isn't always liked, but it is respected. It is remembered. And more importantly, it is liberating. The version of you that stops trying to be liked will be misunderstood. She will lose some people. That's okay. She will also find new people. The ones who don't need you to shrink to fit their comfort. The ones who are attracted to your clarity, not your compliance. Because the moment you stop trying to be likable, you become magnetic. Not because you're loud, but because you're honest. And in a world full of people performing likability, honesty is electric. You start to say things that leave echoes. You start to walk with a presence that doesn't chase. You start to live without negotiating your worth in every interaction. And it feels terrifying at first, like walking barefoot after years of high heels. But slowly, it becomes normal, natural, real, and you begin to wonder how you ever lived any other way. The fear of not being liked doesn't vanish overnight. It still whispers, still tugs. But now, you see it for what it is. You don't obey it, you don't contort for it. You thank it for trying to protect you, and you keep walking anyway. You say the thing, you stand your ground, you choose the silence that follows instead of filling it with more of who you are not. That is courage, not loud, performative courage, but quiet, unwavering inner freedom. And freedom isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's lonely, but it is alive. And being alive in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's rejected, even when it's misunderstood, that is worth more than 1,000 shallow approvals. Because the people who truly matter, they don't need you to be likable. They need you to be you. And now, you finally choose that too. So today, ask yourself gently, what have I been saying just to be liked? What have I been hiding to be accepted? What part of me is waiting to be lived, even if no one claps for it? And then, begin there, not with a shout, but with a breath that says, I release the need to be understood by everyone. I release the need to be liked by all. I choose to be true to myself, and I trust that the rest will find me. This is the beginning of your freedom. It doesn't look like rebellion. It looks like truth. It looks like walking into a room, knowing you don't need to be the favorite. You just need to be real. I no longer chase approval. I no longer shrink to be liked. I am not here to be pleasing. I am here to be real. And that is more than enough. Chapter 12. What winning actually looks like. You were told what winning looks like. From a young age, they gave you images, stories, role models, smiling faces, trophies, promotions, followers, accolades. The ones who climbed fastest, spoke loudest, ran longest. You watched them rise, and you took notes. You told yourself, when I get there, then I'll be enough. And so you tried. Maybe you're still trying. You worked harder, smiled wider, pushed past your limits. You set goals that weren't even yours, chasing a version of success that always moved just out of reach. And when you got the thing, when you hit the number, got the title, won the praise, maybe it felt good, for a moment. But deep down, something still felt hollow, and you wondered, why doesn't this feel like I thought it would? That question? It's not failure, it's your truth waking up. It's your soul asking, what does winning mean to me, not to them? Because real winning doesn't always look good on paper. Sometimes it looks like saying no to what everyone else says yes to. Sometimes it looks like leaving the job, ending the friendship, walking away from the stage. Sometimes it looks like sleeping more, talking less, trusting your own rhythm over someone else's urgency. Winning is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's just not abandoning yourself today, not saying yes to prove something, not performing just to feel worthy. That's the quietest win of all. The moment you choose peace over pressure, softness over speed, alignment over applause. And that kind of winning, it might not be trending, but it's true. And truth doesn't always come with a medal. It comes with a sense of home in your body, a grounded knowing that says, I don't need to do more to be enough, I already am. When you stop chasing someone else's version of success, your whole world recalibrates. You begin measuring your life in different ways. In deep exhales, in honest no's, in slow mornings, in relationships where you feel seen without performing. You start to recognize that winning isn't about being ahead. It's about being aligned with your values, your energy, your truth. And alignment is quiet. It won't always get you celebrated, but it will let you sleep at night. It will soften your jaw. It will make your life feel like yours. That's the win. Sovereignty. Not control, but choice. Not dominance, but direction. A life where you no longer ask, is this what they want from me? But instead, is this what I need from me? And when the answer is yes, you choose it. Without guilt, without explanation, without the need to be seen as impressive. Because, you see, you now. And that is more than enough. You don't have to reject ambition. You just have to redefine it. Let your ambition be rooted in presence, not pressure. Let it rise from desire, not fear. You can still dream big, still build, still rise. But now you do it differently. You build in rhythm with your body. You rest as a form of strategy. You protect your energy like a leader, not a martyr. And you stop measuring success by how exhausted you are, because burnout is not a badge. Hustle is not your worth, and winning at the cost of your peace is not winning at all. The new definition? It's softer, truer. It sounds like, I am proud of how I showed up today. I chose honesty, I chose clarity, I chose myself. That's what real success feels like. Not shiny, but sacred. Not flashy, but free. So today, ask yourself, what does winning mean to me now? What would my life look like if success was defined by how I feel, not how I'm perceived? And then build that. Live that. Honor that. Let it look different. Let it feel different. Because the old world may not reward this version of you, but your soul will. And in the end, that's the only win that matters. A life where you didn't betray yourself to feel important. A life where you didn't hustle for love. A life where you didn't miss your own presence chasing someone else's approval. A life where you belonged to yourself. That's what winning actually looks like. And you're already on your way. I release the need to chase someone else's version of success. I define winning on my own terms. I choose alignment, truth, and peace, and that is more than enough. Chapter 13. Being feared isn't the same as being alone. There's a loneliness that comes with growth, a strange, quiet space where the air feels unfamiliar, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something real. You stopped saying yes when you meant no. You stopped laughing at jokes that made you uncomfortable. You stopped rescuing people who drained you. You started protecting your peace, choosing yourself, honoring your needs, and suddenly the room shifted. Some people backed away. Some relationships got quiet. Some connections you thought would last forever didn't. And it stings, not because you need them, but because you never thought your healing would look like this. But here's the truth. When you become clear, people who relied on your confusion will leave. That doesn't mean you're alone. That means you may have been taught to equate being liked with being loved. So when the invitations slow down, when your presence makes people nervous, when your power makes them shrink, you wonder, did I do something wrong? But being feared is not a sign of failure. It's often a sign of boundaries, of strength, of wholeness. People who benefited from your self-abandonment will call your self-respect a threat. That doesn't mean you need to be smaller. It means they were never truly seeing you, only what they could take from you. When you stop being who others want you to be, you give them a choice. Meet you in truth or leave. And some will leave. That's not rejection, that's clarity. That's the shedding of relationships built on versions of you that no longer exist. You're not alone because you've changed. You're just between frequencies, between the person you used to be and the people who will meet you where you're going. It's like pruning a tree. It looks bare for a while, but the roots are getting stronger. And in that space, you'll learn something sacred. Your own company is no longer a punishment. It's a sanctuary. You'll stop filling silences with noise. You'll stop chasing presence that feels conditional. You'll stop apologizing for your solitude, because in that solitude, you'll meet yourself, honestly, fully, gently, and you'll realize, I'd rather be alone with my truth than surrounded by people who need my silence to stay close. That is not isolation. That is integrity. That is emotional freedom. Yes, you'll miss people. You'll miss the version of yourself who didn't yet see the cost of pleasing. You'll miss the way things used to feel. That's human. But don't confuse nostalgia with belonging. Some connections were safe only when you were small. Some relationships depended on your willingness to disappear. And now that you're visible, fully here, fully feeling, fully honest, some will step back at them. That's not your burden. That's their threshold. Your job is not to stay likable. Your job is to stay true, and truth will attract what's real. Slowly, quietly, steadily. The people who see you now and still stay, those are your people, not the ones who liked your masks, the ones who love your mirror. So let it be okay if your power makes some people flinch. Let it be okay if your truth feels like distance to those who were never really close. Let it be okay if your growth costs you popularity. You are not feared because you are cruel. You are feared because you no longer comply. You are feared because your no is clean, because your silence is no longer permission, because your peace is no longer performative. And that fear, that's not your weight to carry. Your job now is to stand, open, honest, whole. To be misunderstood without apologizing, to be seen without shrinking, to be alone without feeling broken. You are not alone. You are aligned. And alignment always clears the room before it fills it again. Trust that. I do not fear being misunderstood. I am not alone. I am aligned. I release relationships that required my silence, and I honor the power of my presence. Chapter 14. The king doesn't rush, he rises. You've been taught to run, to chase, to keep pace, faster, louder, sooner. The world hands you deadlines like ultimatums and calls it ambition. It whispers, hurry or you'll miss it. Hurry or you'll fall behind. And so you race, you climb, you prove. And maybe you've gotten good at it. Maybe you even look successful while your nervous system trembles beneath the surface. Because what they never told you is that rushing doesn't lead to peace. It leads to exhaustion, to disconnection, to winning battles that don't even belong to you. But real power, real royalty, it doesn't rush. It doesn't explain. It rises, quietly, steadily, with presence. The king doesn't chase the throne. He becomes it, moment by moment, breath by breath, until the crown is not a symbol, it's a frequency. When you rush, you leave yourself. You move from pressure, not presence, from fear, not fullness. And in that state, it's easy to forget who you are. Easy to measure your value by how busy you are. Easy to panic when others move faster. But alignment doesn't move in panic. It moves in rhythm. And when you rise from alignment, everything changes. You no longer chase timelines that don't fit your life. You no longer run toward validation that doesn't nourish your soul. You begin to trust your own seasons. You begin to honor your pace. And that, more than anything, is what makes your power undeniable. Not how quickly you get there, but how deeply you arrive. The king doesn't fear silence, he uses it. He doesn't fear solitude, it sharpens him. He doesn't explain his rhythm, he embodies it. And that's the invitation for you now. to stop proving and start becoming, to slow down, not because you've failed, but because you're finally listening. Listening to what your body needs, to what your spirit is asking for, to the timing that's always lived inside you. Maybe you were never behind. Maybe you were just rushing toward a life that was never yours. And now, you pause. You realign. You rise. Not by force, but by frequency. Not by control, but by clarity. And the more you trust your rise, the less tempted you are to compare it to someone else's climb. Let others race. Let them post. Let them push. That's not your path anymore. Your path is quiet, intentional, sacred, and the deeper you root, the higher you'll rise, not in noise, but in knowing, not in flash, but in fullness. There's a version of you that no longer needs to be seen quickly because she knows she's becoming something timeless. She doesn't demand attention, she draws it, not by chasing light, but by becoming it. And in this phase of your life, you are no longer sprinting. You are no longer asking for permission to rest. You are no longer apologizing for not rushing. You're learning that presence is not weakness, it's power. And the world will catch up to you when you're ready, not before. So today, breathe slower, speak softer, move with purpose. Let the urgency melt from your shoulders. Let the old pace fall away like skin that no longer fits. You are not falling behind. You are rising on time. The king within you was never born to run frantic. He was born to stand still and be remembered, not because he shouted, but because he embodied. And now, so do you. You don't rise by racing, you rise by returning. Returning to your breath, your truth, your rhythm. And in that return, you remember. I was never late. I was always just becoming. I release the need to rush. I rise in my own rhythm. I trust my timing. I am already aligned, already arriving, already enough. Chapter 15. When you choose yourself, you win. There is no louder silence than the moment you finally choose yourself. And the world doesn't cheer. You expect celebration, clarity, a surge of triumph, but what greets you instead is stillness, space, an unfamiliar quiet. And for a second, doubt creeps in. Did I do the right thing? Was choosing myself selfish? Was it too much? You look around for approval, but there's no one clapping, no one reassuring, and that's when the real work begins. Because choosing yourself is not about being celebrated. It's about being centered. It's about deciding, even in the quiet, even in the shadows, that your peace matters, that your healing matters, that your truth no longer needs to be negotiated to keep others comfortable. And in that choice, you win, not because anyone else says so, because you finally looked in the mirror and whispered, "You're allowed to stay with you now." Every time you said yes when you meant no, you abandoned yourself. Every time you silenced your pain, performed your worth, delayed your rest, you told your body, "You come last." And your body remembered. Your nervous system remembered. The tension in your shoulders, the sadness in your eyes, the ache you couldn't name. But now, something else is being remembered. Something ancient, something sovereign. Choosing yourself doesn't erase the past. It rewrites your relationship with it. You begin to forgive the version of you who didn't know better. You begin to thank her, not blame her, for surviving the way she did. And you begin to reclaim what was always yours, your seat at your own table, not in defiance, in devotion. Devotion to the life that was always meant for you, not the one you were shaped to survive. Choosing yourself is not a one-time moment. It's 1,000 small decisions. To rest, to walk away, to tell the truth, to stop chasing. It's making room in your life for what nourishes you, even when it disappoints others. It's unlearning the belief that love must always look like sacrifice. And most of all, It's choosing presence over performance. You don't have to be healed to choose yourself. You just have to be honest. You don't have to be confident, just committed to listening, to slowing down, to honoring the subtle voice inside you that says, I matter too. That voice is your compass now, and following it will take courage. Because choosing yourself will not always be met with kindness. Some people will call it selfish. That's okay, let them. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. The win is not in who applauds you. It's in who you become when you stop waiting to be chosen. When you stop begging for space and start claiming it. When you look at your life and realize you are no longer tolerating what used to break you. That's the win. It's in the peace that lives in your chest, in the boundaries you protect, in the joy you stop apologizing for. You win when you wake up without dread, when your smile isn't staged, when your silence isn't fear but fullness, when your love for others finally includes you. That's not selfish, that's sacred. And the world may not know what to do with that version of you, the one who chooses herself and doesn't flinch. But that's okay, the world will catch up. You're not here to be palatable, you're here to be whole. So take this moment, breathe it in. You didn't need to earn this. You didn't need to be perfect for this. You just needed to arrive. And you did. You are here, with everything you've learned, released, reclaimed, with all your shadows, all your softness, all your truth. And as you sit here now, in this quiet knowing, let the words settle. I chose myself, and that was the win. Not the loudest ending, but the truest one. And from here, everything begins. I choose myself, without apology. I rise in my truth, I return to my peace, and in doing so, I have already won.